We tend to think of global finance as this chaotic, messy thing that just kind of happens. But what if it isn't? What if this big shift we're seeing, this move to a new kind of digital money in a multipolar world, what if it's not an accident at all? What if it's a design? It's a pretty big question, I know, but you have to ask it. Because when you start looking really closely, you see a pattern. It starts to feel like a very powerful network. The central banks, the IMF, the World Bank, are all working from the same playbook, treating the world less like a bunch of countries and more like a portfolio of assets that needs to be managed.
And this quote right here, it just nails it. We're not talking about some old school empire with armies and borders. This is something else entirely. It's a distributed empire, where the real control comes from the financial architecture itself, from the code and the collateral. Your influence isn't about how much land you own. It's about owning the system.
So to really get our heads around this, we need a new way of looking at it. Let's try this on Versailles. Let's look at the world as one giant investment portfolio, where each nation is like a different product, each with its own very specific job to do.
And the perfect tool for this actually comes from the business world. It's called the Boston Consulting Group's Product Portfolio Matrix. It sounds a little corporate, I know, but stick with me. It's a super simple but really powerful way for companies to figure out which products to pour money into, which ones to just milk for cash, and which ones to phase out. And, as it turns out, it is a shockingly good way to understand what's happening with global money right now. Okay, so the matrix is dead simple. It gives us 4 boxes. You've got your stars, high growth, high share, stuff you invest in heavily. Then you have cash cows. They're mature, they dominate their market, and they just generate steady cash. Question marks are the gambles. High growth, but low share. They could become the next star, or they could totally fizzle out. And finally, dogs. Low growth, low share. You just manage them for stability. So just keep those 4 roles in your head. All right, so how in the world does a business school chart apply to, well, the entire world? Well, once you start using this lens to look at the big economies, their digital currency plans suddenly just snap right into focus. It's like every nation has been given a very specific assignment. First up, let's talk about the designated star. That role, it seems, has been handed to India. For years it was a question mark, but now it's being carefully positioned to be the system's next huge growth engine. So why India? Well, for one, it has massive demographic momentum, and its exports are getting more competitive. But the real reason is its digital infrastructure. It's a lab, really, a template for a new kind of digital capitalism that can be scaled up and rolled out across the developing world. And this creates a two-way street for value. Internally, the digital rupee can push savers into holding domestic assets. And externally, its huge pool of low-cost digital labor can be plugged directly into Western supply chains. Okay, now for the cash cows. These are the big, mature players that basically keep the whole system humming. But here's the thing. The 2 biggest cows, the US and China, have totally different jobs. The US is all about financial extraction, while China is all about industrial extraction. The United States is, without a doubt, the portfolio's #1 cash cow, and its main product? The US dollar, or more to the point, US debt. In this system, having a massive public debt isn't a problem, it's the whole point. It is the cow's milk. By pumping out trillions in treasury bonds, the US gives the entire world the safe, reliable collateral it needs to function. And now, it's pushing that dominance into the future with things like dollar-backed stablecoins and digital versions of government bonds, the so-called tokenized treasuries. China is the other cash cow, but it's playing a completely different game. It's the world's factory floor, its productivity engine. China's focus is on physical stuff, industrial power, massive infrastructure projects, and hard assets like gold. So while the US exports debt, China exports goods. It's also building out its own payment systems like Project Enbridge, and it's recycling all those trade surpluses into its Belt and Road Initiative, creating dependency through physical supply chains, not just financial ones. So we've got stars and cash cows. That brings us to the dogs. Now, in this portfolio, that role falls to the old European powers, the UK and the EU. Their job isn't about growth anymore. It's about management and stability. The UK isn't the capital of the empire anymore, but it's found a new purpose. It's become the system's essential services outpost. Think of it as the clearinghouse. Its job is to provide all the boring but critical stuff that makes everything work. The legal frameworks, the financial plumbing. And that's exactly why its digital currency strategy isn't about some fancy new coin for you and me, but about wholesale settlement and tokenized deposits. It's all about maintaining the pipes.
The European Union has a similar but slightly different role. It's the governor. It's been tasked with managing a controlled, orderly decline. Its main function is preservation. The digital euro, for example, isn't about conquering the world. It's a purely defensive move designed to stop the eurozone from getting carved up by US dollar stablecoins. The European Central Bank is basically acting like a colonial governor, enforcing the rules and making sure stability is the #1 priority.
But here's the thing. A portfolio is always changing. Roles evolve. And now we're seeing a new player emerge. The Gulf states are carving out a really interesting niche as a new type of cash cow, one that's acting like a critical bridge in this new multipolar world.
This is absolutely fascinating. They're using their massive energy wealth to become a central hub for settlement. They take those huge oil and gas profits and turn them into liquidity for the entire system. They still price oil in dollars, which keeps things stable, but they're increasingly settling the actual payments in other digital currencies, connecting East and West. It's basically a 21st century version of petrodollar recycling, turning oil money into permanent financial power.
Okay, so we've seen all the individual pieces on the board. Now let's zoom out and see how they all lock together. Because this isn't just a random collection of roles. It's a single, self-stabilizing global machine, where every single part needs the others to work. Just look at the flow here. You have the production engines, like China and India, making all the real stuff. You have the US supplying the financial bedrock, the collateral for everything. The Gulf states then inject the cash from their energy sales back into the system. And finally, the UK and EU provide that stable legal and settlement chassis that keeps the whole machine from shaking itself to pieces. It's a system of perfect interlocking dependency.
And all of this leads us to the great paradox of our time. The more digital our money gets, the more we hear about things like programmable currency and tokenized assets that are supposedly decentralized, the more centralized the governance of it all seems to become.
What this is all pointing towards is the rise of a brand new kind of empire, an empire of ledgers. An empire that won't be run by armies, but by algorithms. Not by governors, but by code, by collateral, and by debt, all designed to lock each part of the world into its specific role within this global monetary machine. It is a breathtakingly ambitious plan when you think about it, balancing global portfolios across entire continents. But it leaves us with one final and really critical question. In a world that's increasingly run by these automated, interlocking empires of ledgers, who or what is actually holding the pen?